Today is Saturday, March 19th, 2022. My name is Lori Kurtz, pronouns she, hers. Would you introduce yourself, say your pronouns if you care to, and tell us all the things you do?
Yes, good morning, Lori. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me this morning. My name is Leo Prowl. My pronouns are he, him. I am a burlesque performer. I am a performing artist, primarily musical theater. I am a producer, director, and a lover of all things that are focused on dignity and respect for all humans.
Great. What is burlesque?
Great question. Big question. And I think it matters a little bit for every individual as to what burlesque is for them. I'll tell you, primarily for me, burlesque is freedom. Burlesque is the freedom to be yourself. It is the freedom to express who you are in a group of individuals who are accepting of who you are. It's empowering. Freedom is empowering, right? We look around the world today at so many countries and individuals who try to take away freedom. And so for me, burlesque is almost a statement. It's a statement that we refuse to accept anything less than the freedom to express who we are as individuals, who we are as a society, and to be empowered in that moment. There are some other things, right? I absolutely love that burlesque gives us the opportunity to express ourselves in ways that might be normal for society. But at the same time, that lack of normality gives us in burlesque the opportunity to redefine what is normal. And in many instances, I mean, throughout the history of burlesque and especially, I would say in burlesque right now, there needs to be work in redefining what normal is. And it's an absolute privilege and honor. Sometimes it's scary, all right, to have that privilege, but that's what burlesque is. And then on the other side of it, it's a lot of fun to take your clothes off in front of people. So it's both and, right? Burlesque is a lot of fun. It's a great time, but there is that sense of weight of we're doing something very special here.
Yeah. And can you just throw out some words about the normal and anti-normal that you're talking about?
Yeah. I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday, and he said he enjoys our conversations because we both get to be present in the moment. And I think so often we because of societal norms, we try to present ourselves in a very particular way. We try to dress in a particular way, to think about, well, this is the world around me. This is the way the world wants me to look, wants me to be, wants me to talk, right? Wants me to represent ourselves. But that's not normal. And so burlesque gives you the opportunity to redefine what normal looks like, right? Is it me coming out with feathers all over my body, right? Is it me coming out in drag? Is it me coming out to demonstrate who I want to be with an elaborate costume, right? Is it me coming out and just wanting to be a stage kitten and coming out on stage and just interact with the audience and have fun? Whatever that is, I get to be me and I get to be present as me. And I don't have to strip that back in any way. If I want to, great, I can put on a show and put on a performance, but people understand that that's what I'm doing, right? And so that kind of normality, it comes back to one thing. I get to be me and I get to be present as me in this moment.
Yeah. And so you did just describe a bit about the kind of burlesque that you do, but can you be more specific about what kind of burlesque do you do?
Definitely. So this is an interesting question. Several years ago, when I thought about auditioning, so I went to an open audition for a burlesque show, and I had seen, this was in Bend, Oregon, and I had seen a couple shows, and I knew of some of the folks who were the owners and founders of Bend Burlesque Company, and this was 1 or 2 years after they had started. I was trying to think this morning, I believe it's 2018, 2017, 2018. And I knew this group because I performed a lot of musical theater, some straight shows too, but a lot of musical theater in Bend. And I have off and on been performing musical theater since I was 11, 12 in community theaters, et cetera, right? And so, my style, okay, I'll back up a little bit. I have auditioned for a whole bunch of different things before. I auditioned for Disney once, I auditioned for, different groups. And the comments have always been, man, great actor, beautiful voice, just can't dance. Since the time I was in high school, just cannot dance. And I have a really hard time dancing, especially on stage. And it's not because I'm nervous, or it's just, to be quite frank, I cannot move my body and have words come out of my mouth at the same time, which is one of the reasons I rarely lip sync when I perform burlesque, because I can't do it. It will throw me off. And so going into this burlesque audition, I thought, my goodness, I've been told my whole life I can't dance. How am I going to do this, right? And I thought, you know what? I can move my body seductively, done that before, worked not very often, but worked before as a male stripper. And then I thought too, I can tell a story with my body, right? It's funny because I played Chef Louis once in The Little Mermaid, which was one of my favorite roles that I've ever played before. And I had the entire song choreographed. The song, you know, Les Poissons, Les Poissons. I had the whole thing choreographed, when I was going to pick up a knife, when I was going to chop the board, all of those things. And I thought, you know what? That's what it is, right? For me, I want to tell a story when I do burlesque. So whenever I approach a song, it's what story am I telling with this? It could be an absolutely ridiculous story, right? But what's the story that I'm trying to tell with this? And then everything else I build off of that. I don't think of myself as a dancer. Now, I've done one or two songs that were highly choreographed, but I think of myself as a storyteller. Now, I cannot do improv on the spot. If you ask me to try to come up with something, I cannot do that. I will freeze. It will not look good. It will become a lot more stripper-esque, right? Because that I can kind of make up, but it's not to me what I want to present for burlesque. And what that is a real story. So it takes a lot of forethought, takes a lot of practice for me, but that's how I approach every single number that I do.
Yeah. And so you just described a little bit of the difference between stripping in a club and burlesque, and it's the storytelling in burlesque. Can you break down more about being a male stripper and how that came to be, and what kind of dancing, non-dancing you did?
Yeah, so I've never performed in a club before. I thought about auditioning a couple times, almost didn't because so I lived in Bend, no clubs for male strippers in Bend, moved to Austin where they do have male clubs for stripping, wanted to do that there. Then COVID happened the week after I got in Austin. So I couldn't audition. There was nothing, I couldn't do anything. Moved to Seattle, strip clubs there, you can't have alcohol. And so they're not very popular, and especially male strip clubs, there aren't a lot of them there. And then I moved to Ashland, Oregon, really no place for male strippers there. So I've never performed in a club before, but when I was in Bend, I used to work with a couple different agencies. I knew a couple different people who would do parties, right? And so I did a lot of bachelorette parties, a lot of parties for lifestyle events, different stuff. Would just go in and mostly just be some entertainment, just a lot of fun. Sometimes I would go out, with a group of bachelorettes, and they just wanted to go out on the town, so I would go out, dance with them, get drinks, that kind of stuff. To me, it's almost more of what I did, right? It wasn't so much here, I'm going to get up on a stage and strip for you. That's been more of my burlesque experience. This was more, I'm going to give you an unforgettable night as a quote unquote entertainer. And there are a lot of things that I love about stripping, but honestly, that is not at all what I was talking about before, about being present and getting to be me, right? That's a fantasy. And I like that too. So don't get me wrong. That's not me pretending to do something I don't want to be doing. I enjoy that a lot, but it's a lot different than burlesque for me. So fun, but not the same experience.
Right, right. And what is the difference in that milieu in being an entertainer, male stripper, and a male escort? Is it the same?
No, I think that here's the primary difference. So as a male stripper, they know that you are putting on a show. They don't have any problem with that. It's part of what is fun about it, right? They know you're putting on a show for them. The key to being an escort, which I've done less of, but I have done before, is they don't want to know in the moment that it's a show. They know that it is. They know that it is, but they want to forget, right? And so it involves an excellent actor to be a good escort. You have to be an excellent actor. You have to convince them every single moment you're with them, this is real. This is real. So you can take them there. So That's the difference. I think that's where the acting skills really come in, right? I've done everything from, look, you pay attention to body language, you learn what somebody likes. How do they like that you carry yourself? Do you need to change your voice for them, right? Do you need to change what drinks you have? All of those kind of things. Do you need to change how you dress? All of those things go into being an escort, a good escort, right? So it's just different. You have to, in the moment, not only become their dream fantasy, but become their dream fantasy in a way that you have convinced them that the entire thing is absolutely 100% real.
Perfect. Perfect. Do you think you're born knowing how to, I mean, that's quite a skill set,
Yeah.
that intuitive ability to change, reading. How do you think you came to have that skill set?
Oh, that's a big question. That's a big question. You know, it's funny because we'll have to go back a really long way. My dad was a pastor, so I grew up as a pastor's kid, homeschooled. And my mom still tells stories about when I was one. In the very first, I moved to Salem when I was 2. So I was really young, moved to Northeast Salem. But when I was young, they were the pastor. My dad was pastor of a small country church in Albany. Actually, that's where I was born, in Albany, Oregon. And my mom tells stories about how it was a really difficult church, difficult time for them. And she would tell stories about how they just sit around the living room at night and be in tears, right? Just crying. And she said that I used to go at 1 year old in the middle of the floor and just entertain them, just roll around on the floor, make them laugh, just change their, she said we would come home, we'd put you in the middle of the floor and we'd all forget about everything and we'd just laugh. So for a really long time, right, I've been tuning into people and entertaining people for as long as I can remember and really changing who I was based on the setting in which I found myself. It's interesting, my name's Simeon, it's Shimeon in Hebrew, it is a Hebrew name, and it means one who hears. That's what it means. And so for all my life, I've been the one who hears, but not just hears with my ears, right? But can pay attention and really see based on what I'm hearing from that other individual. It's funny because there are multiple different words in Hebrew for hear. And this word for hear means someone who hears and takes action based on what they've heard. That's what it means. So for instance, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad means, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, which doesn't just mean, oh, hear this with your ears. It means, okay, you know this, take action on it, right? So all my life, I've been the kind of, I've been someone who hears or sees or takes something in and then takes action on that. So I was raised very conservatively and found myself learning how to adapt into that culture based on what I saw and based on what I heard. The same thing in college. I went to a private Christian college in Indiana. I study ancient Near Eastern languages. That's why I know some Greek and Hebrew and Egyptian and so forth. Then I went to grad school, same story, right? Learned how to really adapt myself to that culture. And it wasn't until after that I moved back to Bend from Mississippi and really started needing to break out of some of that personally, right? But that's been, most of my life up to that point was learning how to play off of other people, learning what other people wanted to see, what they wanted how they wanted me to be, right? In order to really influence them. So I've used that most of my life to be able to influence other people based on what I observed of them. So as funny as this sounds, growing up in a conservative culture where you had to be a certain way based on the people around you made me be a pretty good escort, pretty good stripper, and a pretty good burlesque performer. So not at all what my parents intended, not at all. But hey, it's I'm thankful for it at the same time for where I am today.
And so are you from an artistic family? How did that all come about?
Yeah, so my family sang always. I grew up singing in church. We would travel to different churches singing. I sang regularly in church in the choir. My dad sings. My dad and mom actually met in choir at the University of Oregon. That's how they met. So singing has always been a huge part of our family's life. And in high school, I remember they gave me the option. I was homeschooled, but actually in Northeast Salem, homeschoolers can participate in some public high school stuff. So they gave me the option in high school. I could either go play football for McNary, which I love football, still do, or I could participate in homeschool band and choir, which sounds cheesy, but there were about 100 homeschoolers in Northeast Salem who got together for band and choir. So it was a really big deal. And so homeschool band and choir slash theater. And it was just, I loved it too much. I loved music. I loved theater. That's what I wanted to do. So that's really the path that I went down. Played trumpet 4 years. My first show was at the Gallery Theater in McMinnville. I played Gilbert Blythe in Anne of Green Gables. And so that was my first kind of foray into theater. So not musical theater. And then I actually, it's a funny story that I ended up here in Ashland. I went to a Shakespeare workshop for homeschoolers in particular, and the gentleman who taught the class performed here in Ashland. His name was Christopher Liebrecht, and he would come. I remember he's this big, imposing man with long black hair, and so we do Shakespeare. I got to play Macbeth and Bassanio from The Merchant of Venice and different parts. And I remember he really instilled in me. He said, "Okay, if you're going to do this, you're going to spend your time to do it well, right?" Of course, he loved Shakespeare, but it was more about theater in general. If you're going to do this, do it well. And so, I did some of that. I did a little bit of directing, producing some different stuff in high school. Did some in college, not very much. I went in as a music major, so I did a lot of choir and so forth. Ended up changing my major to ancient Near Eastern languages. Didn't do so much in grad school, although, and we can get back to this later. But ever since high school, I've performed in senior living communities, so assisted living, memory care, independent living. I've always been doing that. Love senior adults, which is why I work with senior adults today. But didn't really get back into doing theater and more performance till after grad school. Moved back to Bend. Bend has a fabulous theater scene. Ended up doing quite a bit there in Bend.
Yeah. What did you study in grad school?
Same thing, ancient Near Eastern languages. That's what my degrees are in. So my primary languages were Greek and Hebrew. And in grad school, it turned to mostly Hebrew. It's what I did, not really a dissertation, but final project, capstone project on the significance and the influence of written contracts in the ancient Near East, right? And so talking about how contracts specifically between different cultures, how that influenced, and then just a little bit of time I spent on military propaganda in the ancient Near Eastern language, which I could talk about this forever, but it's interesting. Some people, of course, would disagree with me, but from a literary standpoint, story of David and Goliath, it's written to be literary propaganda. It's almost like if you and I were to watch Captain America, we know that it's not real. The audience knew it wasn't real, but that doesn't matter, right? They're watching the story. In this case, they're hearing, because of course, most people didn't read, right? So they're hearing this story about propaganda where they know that it's false, but this is a story that means something to them. The little guy defeating the big guy, right? So I love that. I love that aspect of propaganda, and then also the contract part, because I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to formal documents, legal documents, and so forth. But that was my kind of capstone project in grad school.
And you work with senior adults?
I do, which is an interesting story. So in grad school, I started working for Starbucks, and I worked for Starbucks for 3 years, became an assistant store manager, worked in Bend, worked in Portland for a little bit. And I just remember thinking, Starbucks was a great company to work for, but I wanted to do something that was more meaningful and rewarding for me personally. So I was laying in bed one night and I thought, if I could do anything in the world as a profession, what would it be? And it was to be working with senior adults in some capacity. Absolutely love it. My best friends growing up were senior adults. I'd go down the street to Grandma Katie's house. We'd listen to Elvis Presley records together. Grandpa Jack's, I worked on his farm growing up. He loved more Marty Robbins, Jim Reeves, those kind of characters. But I remember, if I could do anything, I want to work with senior adults. So I was in a show. What show was I in? Don't remember the show. In a show, and the costume designer, I knew that she worked in senior living. I didn't even know what she did, but I knew she worked in senior living. So I went to her and I said, "Hey, I'd really like to get started in senior living. What do you recommend?" And she said, "Well, you have kind of a lot of experience with entertainment. You have a lot of community connections. I'd really recommend you be kind of an activity director, right? That's a great place to start." So I said, "Okay, do you know of any openings?" And she said, "Well, turns out I have an opening at my community. I'm the executive director. Come work for me." So next week, I found myself putting in my 2-week notice as an assistant store manager at Starbucks, walked into a memory care community, and walked down the hall. The story is a little bit crass, but it's the reality of working in memory care. First time walking through a community, this woman comes up to me. She has memory impairment, right? So most of my profession, I've worked with folks who have Alzheimer's or other dementias. She walked up to me and she says, "Hey, you're new around here and you're good looking. How you doing?" She reaches up, she grabs my crotch. That is my first interaction with any resident who has memory impairment. And I thought, oh my God, what did I get myself into, right? What did I get myself? That was first day ever. But over the last almost 5 years, I've known this for almost 5 years now. I absolutely love it. I love it because you have the opportunity every single day. I'll tell you this particular resident, right? Let alone the fact, the whole grabbing the crotch incident. That's just kind of a funny part of working in senior living. It's an opportunity to change their day every single day. And for her, all she wanted to do was to just be seen and loved as a human being. Just want to type, right? Just want to type her. Now, yeah, she channeled that inappropriately. And folks with cognitive impairment often do, right? Because there are things that happen in your brain, but it's more than that. It's more than that. It's the opportunity to really change someone's life. And this kind of ties back to burlesque for me, which it's interesting that it does. You have the opportunity with senior adults, especially folks with cognitive impairment, to see people for who they really are, not judge them for that, to accept them for that, to be with them in that moment where they are, and to be totally okay with that. And that is a really empowering thing for me to have. Empowering is wrong. It is a redeeming thing for me to be able to do, to have that opportunity. And I like to think that I'm able to really change someone's life. They can forget it 10 minutes later. Doesn't matter. A, there's been that moment of redemption. B, it is interesting, and I am going off on a tangent here, but it is interesting to see how 5 minutes, even if they don't remember, changes the rest of their day because of that feeling and that emotion that comes out of it. And I will connect this back to the topic that we are discussing. For me, I can do a burlesque show and in the next week have a better week, have a healthier week personally. And I might not know it in that moment, but oftentimes it goes back to that show. I had a moment where I got to be me and got to be accepted by people. And that's enough to get me through that next week.
And so earlier you said you started in burlesque in about 2017, 18?
Yeah, 2017, 2018. I know it was January, February. I'm going to say 2018. Pretty sure it was 2018.
Okay. How did that get started? How did you pick your stage name?
Oh, good question. So I've changed my stage name once. It's always been Leo. And it's Leo because I am a Leo, 1. 2, just like the name Leo. And 3, I have a large lion tattooed on my right shoulder. So I thought, you know what? That makes sense. I like it. Easy to remember. Right? It's a lot easier to say than my name, which is Simeon. But Leo's great. It works well, right? So I did that, and it's kind of stuff. Originally, it was Leo Pride, Pryde, right? Because of the whole play on the Pride of Lions type situation. But then I thought, you know what? That's a group of lions. I'm the only lion, so I should probably change it to something else. So I went about a year into it. I changed it to Leo Prowl, which I just thought was kind of cooler to say and fit better for being one Leo. So that's where I've been, Leo Prowl, and it's been good. It fits me.
Yeah, yeah. And then getting started in burlesque. I mean, how did that come about?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like I say, I knew of some folks who perform burlesque because of my connections with theater, and I saw them post an open audition, and I thought, man, I would love to do this because I've been to a couple shows and I just seen the energy that was there, that people got to be again who they were, that everyone in the room. It's just when you're in a crowd watching burlesque, even it is crazy to see how everybody's shit that they put on the outside goes down, unless they want to put on shit, and then they're being real about the shit that they want to put on, right? And so I thought, man, I want to be a part of that, right? So I auditioned thinking, don't know how this is going to go because I've always been told terrible dancer. I spent 2 months, hours every single day rehearsing for my first routine that I was going to do, and ended up getting second place. Got second place in it was like a competition, right? So I got second place, but the top three actually got invited to come back and be a part of the routine. So that's how I started. I remember I did one song, I did Michael Bublé as well, his version of I'm Your Man. I don't know if you know that song, but great song, really lends itself well to burlesque. And I've always been pretty good at picking songs, but I think that's the musical theater part, right? Because I can see this is the story that I want to tell. These are the natural parts in the song where I know there's going to be build up to, taking off clothes and stuff, which that's the musical theater part. I know, because you can see a song when you approach, okay, I get it. This is where this is where the crescendo is. This is what I need to lead up to it, different stuff. So it went really well, loved it. And then from there, it just, it exploded for me.
How did it explode? How did you develop your career from there?
So for the first, up until recently, I only performed with Bend Burlesque. That was it. That's all I did was perform with them. And I am the next show actually that I did was to be a part of a drag show, not in drag, but one of my favorite, Miss Deb Autry there in Bend. She's fabulous and has a great, the Cult of Tuck there in Bend is a great company of drag performers. And I remember she contacted me. She said, we'd like you to be the token straight male in our next drag show. Would you be willing to do so? And I was like, oh, hell, this is my second show, but sure, whatever, let's go for it. And so I talked to her. I was like, okay, what do you want, right? Because I've never done drag before. Not like I'm not against it, but I know that drag is an extremely serious venture and I don't want to take that lightly, right? So this is my second performance. What exactly do you want? And she said, we want you to be the most stereotypical heterosexual He-Man type person you possibly can be. So I was like, okay, fuck yeah, I can do that. So I did James Brown's It's a Man's World, wore flannel, had an axe up on stage, the whole thing. And that was fun. That was really, really fun. So kind of got thrown into a lot of different experiences, ended up helping because I produced and directed some, theater performances. And so some of the other performers in Bend Burlesque said, hey, can you help us with some of this stuff? So I jumped in both on the performing side and then also some of the behind the scenes stuff. I used to work with small businesses doing their digital marketing. So kind of helped brainstorm some ideas on how to promote and stuff and ended up doing, I've never been somebody up until now, actually recently, just in the last 6 months, who does a ton of shows. I usually space them out, 2 months, sometimes 3 months in between, because it does, believe it or not, it takes me a long time to get a number down. Because I'm still not an incredibly talented dancer, right? So it takes me a long time to get it right. But then once I get it right, I'm really confident in it. So at the beginning, especially when I was trying to find moves that worked for my body and how I wanted it to look, that took a lot of time to figure out. And so I didn't do a lot up front and then ended up kind of progressing and growing. I think it's kind of sort of I don't know, crescendo is the right word because I did a couple shows after that, but one of the performances where I felt most comfortable and confident that this is exactly what I wanted it to look like is we actually did a kink show in Bend. That was the Alice in Wonderland story. So we did was down the rabbit hole. And I got to dress up as the Mad Hatter. So I had all the theatrical parts, but I also got to have all the different props. At the end, as part of the kink show, we did different demonstrations of different kinks. So I got to do wax play and teach about wax play and how to do that safely and some different stuff. So that was a lot of fun because it was both the burlesque part and then that performing part, that everything was there for me. So that was a big part of it. But yeah, and then now, in the last several months, so with COVID, and I know I'm kind of skipping ahead, I think, to where you wanted to go here, but moved to Austin the week before COVID happened, and I worked in senior living. And so that first week, I remember I was there for 1 week. Community, 80 residents with cognitive impairment. They never met me, didn't know anything about me, families, right? Staff didn't know me. Next week, I had to email everybody, said, hey, I'm sorry, no, you don't know me. You're no longer welcome to visit your loved ones in the middle of a global pandemic, right? Went to the staff members and said, hey, we have this life-threatening virus that's going around. You gotta trust me. You gotta trust me. And that was a week into it, right? And that was huge. That I think that I will never forget that year, right? That really shaped who I was. But because of that, especially with the responsibility that I had, in senior living, COVID-19 can be disastrous to say the least, right? And so I just didn't go anywhere. Ordered in sometimes. It was crazy. Been to Austin, lived in Austin for a year until after I got vaccinated the last year. I never went out except to Tokyo. I went to get gas. I went to HEB, which is the grocery store there, and I went to the liquor store. That's everywhere that I went my entire time in Texas until after I got vaccinated that next year. So I didn't do any burlesque, which was so sad because Austin has some great burlesque. They also have some great strip clubs for males and females down there. So it was a real, it was so terribly sad. Now, I will also say that the community I worked in was very, very successful in limiting exposure to and transmission of COVID-19. So worth it, right? Worth it. But very, very sad that I missed. I want to go back and visit sometimes when I can actually do something. My friends who I made there, like, come back, stay with us, we'll go out and do stuff. But so that was that. And then I moved to Seattle after Austin and at the beginning of 2021, I think March or April-ish, and love Seattle. Never lived in Seattle before. I lived in Kirkland, which is just a beautiful area of Seattle. And, surprising, like I said, because they don't allow alcohol there, strip clubs aren't really so much of a thing, but they do have some really, really good burlesque troupes. And so that's where I got connected with a couple different kind of pillars of the burlesque scene. Holly Dolly is up there, and Lindsay Louise is up there as well, kind of more in mid, Eastern Washington, and got a chance to perform with them and some folks from Bend Burlesque, because some folks from Bend Burlesque were performing in one of their shows in Southern Seattle and said, hey, bring him over, right? Let him do a couple numbers. And I was nervous because it had been a little over a year since I had done any burlesque, right? And I was pretty nervous because, like I said, I need a lot of time practicing, and I was out of shape for one, right? As a lot of us were. So trying to get my breath performing on stage, and two, oh my goodness, it's been a while, right? So I ended up actually, for confidence sake, I performed the same Michael Bublé's "I'm Your Man." Went back to a gold standard, different choreography, but I'm confident, comfortable with the song. Broke out the tux. Side note, it's the tux I married my ex-wife in, so that's a whole nother story. But broke out the tux, got the bow tie, which is really my look, right? If I think of, I have a whole bunch of different looks. Signature look, tux, bow tie, that's what I do. And then my second song was called Sexy Nurse, because I really wanted to actually, it's meaningful. Just come this time where I'd worked through a lot of nurses. So I sang a song about sexy nurses, did a mock COVID-19 test in my nose for that performance. It just kind of really brought it full circle from the last month. And then now, it's crazy. I've never done this before, but I'm looking at over the next, month and a half, I'll be doing shows, I think 4 out of 5 weekends, and have stuff booked out through June here in Ashland, Bend, Seattle, Walla Walla, Prosser, Washington, Grants Pass, all over the place, where I'll be performing. And, it is kind of daunting getting back into doing different numbers. I'm doing some repeat stuff, but I try to keep it fresh, or at least if I perform that song at the venue, I'm probably not going to do that one again. I'll pull out from a different catalog. But yeah, it's been something that has become, extremely meaningful to me. And so having that, as big as this sounds, having that lifeline where I get to get in touch again with who I am and what my life is, that's essential. That's essential, man. So it's really an honor to have an opportunity to perform with all these different performers.
Yeah. So you just mentioned some smaller or medium-sized towns, Walla Walla, Prosser. If we said to the general public, where do you think burlesque is? They would probably say big city,
Yeah.
liberal, blah, blah, blah. But what's it like taking burlesque to small towns in Eastern Washington and Eastern Oregon?
Great question. Every single time you don't know what to expect. Every single time. And I will tell you, especially as someone who, and I will say this, so I'm a heteroflexible male, not strictly straight, right? But the performances that I do look like a straight male 90% of the time. Every once in a while, I did Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy recently, and my entire outfit was rainbow, and I came on stage with a unicorn on a stick, unicorn briefs. You would not have guessed that I'm a heteroflexible male at all with that one show, right? Or that one routine. But it's a little bit striking to everybody else, right? Because you have most everybody, even a small town, feels great about when a woman comes out and takes her clothes off, right? That's great about it, right? No issues, females especially, or males, right? But say at Grants Pass recently, right? And I never performed in Grants Pass before. And I went there, and it was so funny because one of the partners, I don't know if she was a spouse, but one of the female partners came up to me. She said, my husband did not know what to do. He didn't know to look at you, to look at me, because he was clearly enjoying it, but didn't want to enjoy it. And it was really, really interesting. You know, I get that a lot. Now, sometimes I get, as I did in Redmond, because I performed in Redmond, Oregon, and I go, this guy was wasted off of his ass, man. And I was backstage because I started Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy from the back of the audience. And I had already performed one song before that in the first act, right? And so I started from the back, and this one guy is on his way out to get a drink, and he looks at me and he's like, are you next? And I said, yeah, I'm next. He said, oh, okay, I'm gonna stay at the bar while you perform. I was like, yeah, no judgment, man, cool, do you, right? But by and large, it's interesting because heterosexual men will come up and be like, look, dude, I could never do that, but better for you, good on you, those kind of things. So I have been surprised at the reception that I get. Now, of course, most often I don't, the women love it. Drag queens, bisexual men and love it, right? So that's not a problem. But I have been surprised sometimes that even at the small cities that I go into, while they will tell me, oh, I would never, ever do that, right? I like to think that the more we were to normalize burlesque, the more men there would be who would say, yeah, man, I want to be me. And I think that there are more individuals who have that inside, and burlesque gives them that opportunity to see there's more. I have the opportunity to be me. And hopefully, I hope not just for me, but for burlesque in general, that we give people the opportunity, we empower them to do that, whether they're heterosexual males, whoever it is, right? They have the opportunity to be them.
And in describing the audiences, you mentioned that the women, the response from the females watching other females strip. And you said, oh, and of course. But explain the of course. Why do you think the females in the audience enjoy this?
And I work really, really hard. So, well, two different things, right? Every time I go to perform with a new group of burlesque performers, it is always awkward at first. And I think for good reason. Because unfortunately, but truly, having a man who presents as a heterosexual male in the room with females, trans folks, non-binary queer folks, it's awkward most often at first because they don't know who I am. They don't know how I'm going to interact with them, if I'm going to be judgmental, if I'm going to be, inappropriate with them, right? So there's always a level of awkwardness. So for me, especially going into a new space, I'm very, very intentional about how I act, right? So I don't, especially if it's new group, and I know that this is some of the details of burlesque, I will not strip completely with a new group of folks. I'll find a bathroom, I will find a quiet place, because I don't want people to think that that's all I'm there for, right? A lot of times I bring headsets, not just because it helps me get in the space, right? But if it's a new group, I'm going to bring headsets. And a lot of times I'm going to look at the floor, focus on my routine, do different stuff, right? Until I have the opportunity to earn their trust, right? And that's huge. You have to have trust between burlesque performers to have a good performance. But with the audience, there's some of that too. I would hope that the way I present myself is always, I say gentlemen, and that's the wrong word, always as a respectful individual. No matter who you are, I'm there to respect you. I'm there to support you. I'm there to accept you as who you are, right? And so I think that especially at repeat venues, right, they learn to trust me. They learn to trust me. They know, hopefully they know that I'm a safe person, that I'm an accepting person, that I'm somebody who's going to inspire them. I'll give you a for instance. This is a really funny for instance. So in Redmond, the last time I performed in Redmond, one of the audience members, a beautiful young woman, her friends called out from the audience that it was slut night, that it was her slut night. And they asked, what does this mean? Her boyfriend had just broken up with her, right? And so at the end of the show, unplanned, they had me come up and do a strip routine for her on stage. So she sat on stage, I got to do a strip routine. We had so much fun with her, right? And after the show, she came up and she, wanted to take a picture with me. Great, we were talking different stuff. And my response was really, hey, look, I want you to know you have immense value. Whatever happened in the past, you have immense value. So go out, be yourself, have fun, know that you are a beautiful person outside, inside, you got this, right? And that's what I would hope, as strange as this seems. Yeah, I love taking my clothes off. But if I could give that message to anyone in the audience, right? That's the message. You're beautiful. Outside, inside, no matter who you are, go out, be you, and have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. And I think that is absolutely essential to who I am as a burlesque performer and what I think burlesque should be in general.
What do you think challenges facing burlesque today?
All right, I'll go a few different directions, right? One, just like in any theater setting, I think that competition is a challenge, right? People want to be the best. People want to be the best. And some of that is healthy, right? Some of that is healthy. And here's one of the other challenges that I say, and we'll tie them together. One of the other challenges is, and I say this being very careful not to judge anyone, right? Because coming new into burlesque is a very daunting thing. Being new to burlesque is very daunting, and we want to be accepting, and we want more people to join the art form. But also, we want people to give it their best, because we don't want the art form to be poorly represented. And so if you don't show up and do your best, right? If you didn't plan ahead, if you don't have your costume, right? My question is, is it really of that much value to you that this is what you want to do? This is what you want to do. Now, on the flip side of that, I told a performer recently it was her second performance, wasn't great, right? But you could tell that she had spent a lot of time planning out her routine, very intentional. She missed some moments. It looked like she was in her head, right? But I told her at the end, look, good on you for taking so much time preparing for this, and you've got this, right? Relax a little bit. Here are some pointers. Don't move too fast, right? Give yourself more time to take your clothes off. All of those things that we can talk about to get better, but it was evident she had spent a lot of time, and I respect that, right? That's all that I ask from somebody who's doing burlesque. Give it your best, right? But the other part that creeps in on that is that competition part, right? That's the other part is, am I better than this person? Am I better than this person? For me, it's always one thing. And this is the thing in life for me, at work, whatever it is. Did I give it my best? Right? I'm competing against myself, truly. I never want to have a performance where I give it less than my best. I've had some performances where I messed up some parts, right? But I know looking back that I gave it my absolute best, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I'll work on those parts that I messed up so it doesn't happen again, and I'll get there, So I compete against myself. But at the end of the day, burlesque is way too important to compete against other people. Now, we do have folks who have differences of opinions, right? There are folks in burlesque who choose not to perform with each other for whatever reason, right? But I also think that it's extremely important for me to say, while I'm choosing not to perform with you again for whatever reasons, most times it comes back to business. People have different business philosophies, right? There should always be this sense of, I appreciate you, respect what you're doing, want nothing but the best for you, right? So I don't want to perform with you. That's not my gig. That's not how I roll. Whatever that is, I appreciate you. I respect you. I want the absolute best for you and the group of folks you perform with. I think that's the culture that we need to get to. And 90% of the time, I think that's where we are, right? So there is a sense of healthy competition because it helps us be our best. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we need to be able to say with those folks that we perform with, who are part of the burlesque community, appreciate you, respect you, want the best for you.
And so final question, what do you wish the general public would understand about burlesque? Why is it important?
As I look around the world today, this is a really big response, then we'll bring it home. As I look around the world today, there is a lot of shit that needs to change. A lot of fucked up shit. And it's going to take a great deal of work to move forward as a global, as a country, as a global society, as a country, and as a local community, whether that means, here in Ashland or, the state of Oregon, whatever it is. We have a lot of work to do. And it is not just from one avenue that work will be done. Political activism, voting, holding people accountable, spending money as you can to support those things that matter, speaking up when you need to. All of those things that I just mentioned, those are all inherent to what burlesque is. So while burlesque is obviously not the magic pill to solve the immense problems of the world that we live in, it is a part of that remedy. What do I mean by that? Burlesque, I'll tell you, we'll make it serious real quick, just for a moment, okay? My favorite burlesque performance that I have ever done was in a very, very difficult time in my life, very difficult time. And I performed to Angel of Slow Death in the Coding Scene. It's a Hoser song. And the whole idea came out with a shovel, and my shirt said that I revealed, my shirt said, "You are not alone." And had suicide hotline prevention line on that shirt, right? That was the most meaningful performance I've ever done. A friend of mine who watched the show said, I didn't know if I was supposed to get turned on or cry, right? And I said, both. Why not both? Why not both? You get a chance to be intensely human with burlesque in a way that you can tell a message. Not every performance. Look, man, when I did Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, there's really no message there, other than the fact that I, as a heteroflexible male, can go out on stage and wear fucking unicorn briefs and a rainbow shirt and be totally fine with that. And there's absolutely zero wrong with that, right? So you get a chance to tell a message. And that's why I think that when I talk about you have to take burlesque seriously to do it, that's why. Because the voice that you have is too important to not do it justice. Too important to not be intentional, not to do it perfectly, right? Too important to not care about what it is that you're doing. So I like to think that in a very, very small way, that every single performance, every single show that I have the opportunity, every single picture that I post on social media, I'm a very, very small part of that remedy that we need to be a part of a society that accepts people for who they are, that supports others in what can be a very difficult life, supports whatever that means with your words, with your money, with creating a society that enables folks who are underprivileged to live life to the fullest, that champions people who are accepting and loving for others, no matter who you are, no matter how you present yourself, not just sexually, right? Where do you live? What's your socioeconomic status? Where are you from, right? What languages do you speak? No matter what that is, that we accept you, that we love you, and we do so fiercely. At its best, inherently, burlesque is fierce. Burlesque is fiercely committed to all of those things that I just mentioned. And we get to be a voice, a physical representation of where we need to go as a community, a country, and a global society. And I like to think that I have the opportunity to be a very, very, but meaningful part of that.
Leo, thank you.
It's a pleasure.